Hello, everybody. It's Colin Ellis here, and welcome to another Culture and Coffee podcast for Monday, the 7th of March 2022. I've changed my location where I'm recording the podcast. We have a little reading room at the front of the house. It's on like the first floor, and it looks out over the kind of main road and the tram lines, and then we've got a park on the other side of the road. It's all very nice. But the thing that I'm noticing more than anything, because last week here in Australia was the first week that people could go back to the office, is all of a sudden seeing traffic like I've never seen. Like I haven't seen this kind of traffic for 2 years. It's absolutely chocker. The rush hour is back, and as well, I mean, Melbourne has a fantastic public transport network, and we've got the bikes and the scooters, but everyone's still a little bit fearful, I think, about COVID on public transport. So not as many people on the trams and more people back in the cars, which is going to give us the other problem of more climate change issues. But there you go. Let's just get over one thing, and then we can deal with the next thing. But the traffic is back. So there you go. There's your traffic report. Now over to Colin Ellis with the weather. Oh, thanks, Colin. Today's weather. It's like a radio show. So yes, hello. I hope you had a great weekend. Wherever you are in the world, things are looking a bit brighter for you. I'm going to be talking about technology today, which I'm actually quite looking forward to today's part. Not that I don't look like, it's not like I get up in the morning and go, oh God, I've got to record the podcast. I always look forward, to talking to myself and then hoping that someone listens to it. But yeah, technology, which I'm looking forward to talking about. But firstly, I want to mention the coffee, because I had a recommendation. So it's always great when people get in touch and say, have you tried? How about you try? So I want to thank Amanda Andrews on the Culture Makers community, which you can join for free at culturemakers.community. Lots of great people sharing lots of great ideas on how you can do stuff better. There's lots of programs and stuff. Love for you to join us, culturemakers.community. But she recommended Dhuwa Coffee, which I hadn't heard of, and it's just been distributed to the local supermarket. So Dhuwa Coffee is a First Nations people owned, so it's Australia's Indigenous owned coffee brand, which is fabulous. So I think, I love, I'm just going to read a little bit from the website here, just getting this up here, celebrates diversity, committed to Indigenous representation. The packaging has some beautiful Indigenous artwork on the front. So it's Griffiths Brothers Coffee Roasters together with First Nations people, Sean Andrews and Adam Williams. And they're producing blended coffee, which is what I'm drinking this morning, which is called Kickstart. So it's where you take beans from different areas. So Brazil, in this particular instance, it's beans from Brazil, India, Papua New Guinea, and Indonesia. It's got a bit of a kick to it. It's definitely, I just had a little bit of sip before I started recording. Let me just have another drink here. Yeah, it's notes of caramel, plum, and chocolate. I'm definitely getting plum and very dark chocolate. Definitely, it's very rich. Let's put it that way. So Dhuwa coffee beans, yeah, fabulous. So thank you, Amanda, for recommending that. I really appreciate it. So yes, let's talk a little bit about technology. Good old technology. Is it a blessing or is it a curse? It's ironic that I'm talking about that, because I'm actually recording this on my phone. I use the Anchor app to record my shows, and which then gets, because it's owned by Spotify, then gets distributed to all of the other, wherever you're listening to this, Apple or Spotify, wherever you listen to it, it gets distributed there. So, I guess, blessing. Probably couldn't do it. Probably could do it. I could do it on my laptop, but it's easier to do on my phone. And of course, the benefit is it's portable. I can take it anywhere. I'm hoping to travel internationally in a couple of weeks. Hope to bring you a couple of shows from overseas. Fingers crossed. Fingers crossed. Do we still do that? Is that still an actual thing? Touch wood, fingers crossed. Do you do any of those things? Like it enhances your look by, I don't know, 100%. It's like, I'm hoping to travel internationally. If I just keep my fingers crossed between now and the end of March, everything will be fine. The thing is when you do that, there's like, right, well, I have to keep my fingers crossed forever now. Not really a superstitious person, but touch wood, yeah, let's hope that comes in touch wood. It, like, just doesn't, I don't even know where these things come from, but yes, fingers crossed. So it's portable. Where was I? Yes, technology. Um, I stay connected with my family, with my brothers predominantly through chat apps. So that's, in fact, I've just started playing. So when me and my, so I got two brothers. I got one who's 2 years younger than me and one who's 6 years younger than me. And so I kind of when we were in our, I suppose, late teens, like we would play different computer games as they were, and then latterly video games. So me and my middle brother, we used to play this game called Championship Manager. It was a football game. It was just like completely addictive. Just like, it's the kind of game where you would manage a football team, right? And at the end of the game, you'd be like, I could totally manage a football team in real life. I now know everything there is to manage a football team, and I could do it in real life. That's how much we played it, right? And so it was great, loved it. But with my younger brother Stephen, we played this game called Medal of Honor. It's like a two-person shooter, and you get put in all of these different scenarios, usually World War II scenarios. Anyway, we've just started playing again. And so my brother set up a channel on YouTube called Middle-Aged Medal of Honor, because obviously that's what it is, two middle-aged fellas. Like, my reflexes are appalling, they're absolutely shocking as we're running around, kind of look for each other. But I guess the point that I'm making here is technology, that's good. All of a sudden, we're having a bunch of fun, and, like 3 hours is going. Twice a week in the evening, just gone. My brother's playing in the morning. Like, fair play to him, he's getting up super early. Like, I'm playing at night. So that's good. That's good. And I think the other good thing is that, me and my team were using Google Workspace. We just transitioned away from Microsoft to Google, Google Workspace is brilliant. Once you learn how, like everything, which I'm going to talk about, once you learn technology, once you learn how to use it properly, there's so much you can get out of it. So much. So that's all the good stuff, right? And it works really, really well, and all of those kinds of things. And then there's those moments where I find myself scrolling through Instagram. I had a real problem. I think I mentioned this on the podcast before. I don't know if this resonates with anybody. But I had a real problem in the middle of the pandemic with news consumption, where I would just constantly read the news. And part of me was just like, I want to educate myself as much as possible. But then it was just doom scrolling, just reading all of the bad stuff. And it really affected my mental health. Like, it properly affected my mental health to the point where I was like, I have to stop reading the news. And I wasn't watching the news. Like, I don't watch much TV. So it's not like I'm sat in front of the TV watching the news. I'm watching the news, but I was reading it. And then you lose the kind of what's fact and what's opinion, all of those kinds of things. So there's that, right? And then there's those times where you're like kind of scrolling through Instagram. And of course we got two teenagers. My wife and I are constantly asking ourselves whether the amount of screen time that we give our children is too much, like every parent. And so we give them 16 hours a day, which feels about right, I think. 16, just your base 16 hours, sometimes 16 and a half hours. Generally 16 hours a day. It essentially enough time so they don't talk to us. That's the way I'm joking. Of course, we love talking to our children for 20 minutes a day. So these are, we've kind of got all of these good and all these bad things. Now, the reason that I thought I'd do it on the podcast, I watched I suppose you can call it a docu-film, if that's the right way of putting it, recently about Oasis. So Oasis are a band from the 90s in the UK, one of my favourite groups growing up in my 20s. Loved it. Went to see them at this tiny little venue in Liverpool just before they became famous. It was like 100 people there, and they were all arrogant, and they were brilliant. And then the next time I saw them was like a stadium gig. But I was watching this documentary about, they did this massive gig in a place called Nebworth in the south of England. And it was the time before mobile phones. And Noel Gallagher, who's the kind of one of the, he's the songwriter for the band. He was saying how great it was because people were present and in the moment. No one was recording stuff. No one was taking pictures of stuff that they're never ever going to. If you see people like taking pictures of stuff, you're thinking you're never looking at that picture ever again. People recording stuff is like no one is ever watching that recording ever again. Like particularly like kids stuff. It's like stop recording it and just watch it. So like, and he was saying how great it was, and it just got me thinking, yeah, is technology a bit of a blessing? Or is it a curse? Now, obviously, in relation to workplace culture, technology is kind of how we stay connected now. It's just massively integrated into our culture. It's such a huge part of it. It has a huge say in the employee experience. And there's still way too many organizations out there who have implemented or rolled out tools. They've implemented tools and still haven't trained people on how to use them. Like, so let me give you the classic example, right, is email. So everyone's just supposed to know how email works. And then every now and again, one of my good mates, Dermot Crowley, does a great productivity course on email. You should check him out, Dermot Crowley, top guy. Because people don't train people on how to use it. You know, every time I go in and do workshops for culture, and there's plenty of them at the minute, which is great, the things that people are bugged about is email. And they don't know how to use it. They don't know how to set up rules to send stuff to the bin and just simple stuff like that. And yet, you know, it's still the case that we don't know how to do it. Microsoft Teams is the latest one, where we just rolled it out, implemented it around cultures, right? And then everything's a video call. And we haven't really figured out how to use the technology. You know, one of the things I do in my culture workshops, I get people thinking and talking about how you can use tools. And like I do these 2-day programs, and in the afternoon of the second day, we do this whole innovation exercise around just one thing you can do differently. And somebody somewhere always comes up with a different way that you can use a tool. And everyone's like, oh my God, isn't that amazing? But where it is right now, and I was reading some research at the weekend from a company called Qualtrics, and what they found was only 1 in 3 employees, actually 30% of employees, said their experience with the company's technology exceeds their expectations. Now, as someone who worked in technology for years, I know one of the biggest challenges we often faced in technology was being order takers. Like, you know, the CFO went to a conference, he saw a new finance system, we had to go and buy it, integrate it into the network, roll it out so they could start using it. You know, and they always used to skimp on the training, you know, or just do half-day training instead of the full 2 days, and then wonder why they ever got the value from it. So I think when you look at kind of IT's role here, and particularly culturally, IT's role, it's not only make sure the stuff works, make sure it's integrated with everything else, but also they've got to act as the organization's conscience when it comes to technology. They've got to question whether this tool is the right tool to purchase at this moment in time. CIOs, you'll be loving this podcast. Feel free to share it. But you're the conscience. You know, people in technology are the conscience. Is this the right thing to do? Is there something else that we can use differently? How are we going to get the value for money? And are we making sure that it adds to the employee experience? Are we ensuring, or how are we ensuring that it makes us more productive? Now, spend on technology, according to Gartner, spend on technology increased like 6-7% last year, and it's planning to do the same again this year. And it's important because obviously you want to make sure that you've got tools that help you collaborate, that are fit for purpose, all of those kinds of things. But not only that, if the tools work, right? So if the tools and the technology work and they add to your experience, employees are likely to be 230% more engaged. 230%, again, that's what Qualtrics found this, 230%. 85% said they were more likely to stay beyond 3 years in their jobs if they feel that they had that technology that supports them. Yet so often it disappoints and it becomes a curse because just nothing works in the way that it should do, or else culturally we don't learn how to use it properly and we end up, you know, kind of just using 1 or 2 features, or, you know, 3 or 4 features, and that's it. So, you know, we have to ask ourselves, for it to be a blessing, to make sure that it contributes. So then we've got to agree, what are we going to use for what? And what are we not going to do? We've got this difference between synchronous and asynchronous tools. So kind of synchronous tools, I suppose the short way of putting it, demands an immediate response. So a synchronous tool is kind of real-time collaboration. So that's where you would use like a Slack. Me and my team, we use Google Chat to use that. So that's that real-time collaboration. So you can have that in Microsoft Teams as well. Whereas something like email is an asynchronous tool. So you'll get to it when you get to it, right? It doesn't demand an immediate response. And I often think, here's another thing, getting on my soapbox here. I often think people use email as a synchronous tool. They send an email, and if someone doesn't immediately reply, they're like, why haven't they replied to my email? Because you haven't agreed how you'll use the technology. Also, you don't understand how it works, right? Forgetting even the content of it. Email is a synchronous tool. I guess the other challenge as well, while I'm on a roll here, is kind of this right to disconnect. So for those of you who read Culture Fix, I wrote about this in Culture Fix, because the French were the first to do the right to disconnect, where they implemented legislation that basically said you can't contact employees outside. Employers can't contact staff outside working hours, right? So many other organizations have followed suit. Spain, Portugal, Ireland have done the same. So it's by law, you can't contact employees outside of specific hours, otherwise you get fined. In France, you can go to jail. So part of that agreement that we make around how we're going to use tools is, well, when's it appropriate to send messages and when's it not? I'm working with one business leader, like she got a Microsoft Teams message at 11:50 at night. Who, what? But my question was, well, what have you agreed as a team? She was like, oh, I just think it's unacceptable. I was like, hey, listen, I get it, but maybe that person really wanted to do that thing late at night. Why is your phone by your bed? For a start, that's where technology is a curse. Oh yeah, the classic comeback was, I need it for my alarm. I'm like, go and buy an alarm. Technology in the bedroom is a really, really bad thing. If not for the fact that it's listening to everything that goes on there. Just, keep that in mind. It's like, why was your phone in your bed? Why have you got your notifications on? Turn your notifications off. I don't know how to do it. There we go. Bless. It's a curse. We haven't learned how to use our phone properly and turn the notifications off. I think this, it's become, our devices have become a bit of a crutch. And, I read some research last year from King's College in London that 4 in 10 teenagers, was it 4? I think it was 4 in 10 teenagers displayed symptoms of smartphone addiction. 2/3 of adults had trouble sleeping. Compared to kind of, 50% of those who are not addicted to the device. And it's become a problem. Now, I posted on the Culture Makers community, we posted a question, is it a blessing or is it a curse? And then kind of overwhelming the responses were, well, listen, it's a blessing. And I think we would probably all agree. Listen, my response was, I think it's a bit of a curse. I'm looking to reduce my use of casual technology use, if that makes sense. So I have like Focus Assist on my Android device, because I just don't want to do mindless scrolling. Listen, I want to, obviously I read lots of research, I take lots of notes, I write lots of things, I need it for my work. That's where technology is great. But other than that, I want to be able to disconnect from it, not least because it's tiring. Right? Then there's eye hunch, where you're constantly hunched over your device. It's really bad for you. But yeah, coming back to the Culture Makers community, the overwhelming feeling was, listen, it's a blessing, but with discipline. And I think from a work culture perspective, that discipline has to extend to those agreements that you make on how you will use technology. How are you going to use it to collaborate? What are you going to do? What are you not going to do? What are those hacks that you can share with each other as a team to help you get the most from it? Are you making sure that you've got the proper training on the tools? Like if your organization's rolled out Microsoft Teams and you've been offered a training course, you've got to take it. You've got to learn how to use it. Make sure you're getting the most from it. And what you want from your technology is to be its master, not its servant. And so many of us are its servant. We exist to put data in it that can get shared with organizations around the world. I don't know about you, but every time I get asked on a website, to manage my preferences, I never click accept. I never click accept. I always reject all of the things. And if you take the time, that I'm that guy, when you take the time to look at who your information is shared with, it's like a zillion people. It's absolutely ridiculous. And even then, you know that you're being tracked. And if you've got location tracking on your device, I'm totally fear-mongering now. I have no evidence that this happens. But if you've got location tracking, like people always know where you are, right? Always know where you are. So we've got these mini location devices on us at all times. I guess what am I trying to say? It feels like it's been a rambling 20 minutes. I hope there's a point that you can take out of this and think, oh yes, we really must agree how we're going to use technology. Otherwise, it's just been a bit of a rant. And I'm not going to be like Noel Gallagher. He'll be pleased to hear that and be like, oh, it was so much better in those. I actually think, when I think back, I used to go to so many gigs, like just a ridiculous number of gigs when I was back in England. And I miss that. If I had a wish and I could go back to a point in time, it would definitely be to a gig. I would go and see Depeche Mode at Crystal Palace again, or In Excess at Wembley Stadium again. Anyway, if I could go back, I think that there are many elements of technology that have enriched our lives, not least in the way that we treat illness, treat disease. And of course, the pandemic recently would not be possible without technology. But I just think that as humans, and definitely in our working cultures, we lack the discipline to use it in a way to help us to be consistently productive. There we go. I brought that I landed the plane perfectly. I hope you've enjoyed today's podcast. If you'd like me to cover anything, you just need to get in touch. You can get me on LinkedIn. Join us at the Culture Makers community. You can ping me all kinds of ideas. If you've got a coffee suggestion, I'd love to try coffee that you suggest. Otherwise, stay well wherever you are. Ta-ra for now.